I'd like to start this afternoon's proceeding off by welcoming Dean Zabrieszach to come and talk to us. Dean is from Vic Roads and he's going to give us a short presentation about logistics planning for Anzac Centenary commemorations in your local area. Mr Zabrieszach has played a leading role in developing the state's traffic and transportation plans for major events such as the Melbourne Formula One Grand Prix, the Melbourne 500 Motorcycle Grand Prix and the 2006 Commonwealth Games. Mr Zabrieszach, thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine, and welcome everybody. Before I start, I'd just like to say there is a perception out there that VicRoads is an unwieldy organisation, difficult to work with, etc. And Mr Baillieu down here just mentioned to me all the roads are stopped, etc. I've been at VicRoads for 30 years and seriously, I wouldn't have been at VicRoads for 30 years if I didn't think it was an organisation to be proud of. We try to ensure that things are done safely. We try to ensure that when events are held, that the events are enjoyed by the people that are going to the events and that the people who aren't going to the events aren't adversely affected. So things like the Commonwealth Games that we ran in 2006, everyone said that was one of the best Commonwealth Games ever, if not the best. The rest of Melbourne didn't even notice they were on. The Grand Prix, everyone talks about the economics of the Grand Prix, but the traffic management for it is as good as anything in the world, and I've been to a few around the world. So I'd like to stress that when we work with you people with respect to Anzac Day ceremonies, etc., we'll be there to help you. Another example, my team that runs basically events in Melbourne now, which has been centralised under me in the last 12 months, worked with the Air Force just in the last 12 months to ensure that the Centenary of Military Aviation event that took place on the weekend went successfully as well, and I believe that was well received. So with respect to Anzac Day events, unfortunately this presentation, I normally do a lot of presentations with pictures and movement and colour and sound, but it sort of didn't lend itself to this type of presentation. The 2015 Anzac Centenary, we're basically anticipating that many clubs and councils who previously haven't held an Anzac Day march or an event may wish to do so. So given they haven't done them in the past, the possibility is that they won't know how to go about it, they'll need some help, there'll be financial issues, etc. And then there'll be others who previously held events who will want to make it an even bigger event because it is the centenary. In those situations, we might have groups that have had existing traffic management plans that may have worked well in the past, but given that it's a bigger event impacting a lot more people, then there needs to be some work done to bring that to a level that is satisfactory. We've been advised over the last 12 months that there's a little bit of confusion in the RSL clubs about the new criteria that we're using, the new rules that we're asking people to follow. I'd like to touch on that. Very briefly, I'll talk about the Shrine of Remembrance Anzac Day event, which is held every year. Obviously, it'll be bigger next year, but we're very confident with the work that we do with Melbourne City Council and Victoria Police that we can manage anything in that respect. And lastly, we all agree that 2014 is certainly a good opportunity to trial any bigger and better events that people might want to hold before we get to 2015. So getting on to this issue of, I suppose, not understanding our requirements, last year we implemented a new requirement that all of our traffic management contractors be pre-qualified contractors, including most, if not all, events. We made that decision probably a little bit late for last year's Anzac Day events, and as a result, on the 9th of April, one of my executive directors put out a directive, so to speak, to get out there and start speaking to the RSL clubs, those that were putting on Anzac Day marches and so forth, and work with them, given the short time frame available to sort of change anything that might have been in place, to ensure that things went ahead, there was no great impost on anyone, the event went ahead safely, and there was no adverse impact on anyone. We said that all new applications at the time should be assessed individually, all efforts made to assist, make every effort to provide the groups with the necessary advice, etc., etc. All previous applications, in other words, there's another application from others that had applied before, we said if the regions, and VicRoads is made up of 7 different regions, 7 different offices in country towns and metropolitan area, so we said to them, if you receive an inquiry, and you've requested a TMP, again, vital to contact the applicant, speak to them directly about how we can help them achieve what they'd like to do. So the background to all this was that in January 2013, last year, as I said, we said all traffic management contractors, whether they're working on roadworks, whether they're working on events, preferably even if they're working on municipal works, they must be pre-qualified. You wouldn't believe the amount of hassle we have on a daily basis with traffic management companies who just go out there and close roads at the drop of a hat, 8:30 in the morning, on arterial roads, on local roads, and then we have to mop up the mess, or at least explain the mess, not necessarily mop it up. So we want pre-qualified contractors. We also want people that are holding an event to apply for a permit. To my team in the metropolitan area, the regional groups in the rural area. That permit is a permit under Section 99B of the Road Safety Act. All it basically says, I'm an event organiser, I want to hold an event on such and such a day at such and such a time, these are the things I want to do. How about VicRoads, you give me a permit? But associated with that permit application, normally we would expect to receive a traffic management plan from a pre-qualified contractor. And also there's a requirement that an event organiser has appropriate insurance. The last thing we want is somebody to get hurt and then there's a litigation situation in court. So we're expecting event organisers to have insurance to the tune of $20 million. Now what we said at the time was that for Anzac Day, VicRoads would waive its requirement to have pre-qualified traffic management contractors if the Victoria Police are involved. And we're very confident over time in the events that the Victoria Police have been involved in particular the ones in Melbourne and some of the biggest centres, that they do know what we want, they do contact us, they let us know what they're going to do, so we're reasonably confident that that will continue to happen successfully. But even when we waive that requirement for a pre-qualified traffic management contractor in those cases, we still require a permit application and we still require the insurance. So in advance of Anzac Day this year, I spoke to some of my people this morning. Probably next week we'll be sending out a letter to all RSL clubs, all 282 of them, as I'm told, communicating what I'm basically speaking to you about today. The need for a traffic management plan, preferably a pre-qualified contractor, the need for insurance, the available contacts in all the regions that you need to talk to, and we won't be just basically saying here's a generic telephone number and by chance somebody might be there. We'll give you a name, a number in a particular office and you'll know that that person is the person that you need to speak to in your particular area. And basically it'll be basically an early alert for the way in which we need to do things next year. The Shrine of Remembrance ceremony, as I said, on Anzac Day, Melbourne City Council have done a really good job for many, many, many years. They've worked with the Victoria Police. They've submitted permit applications as we have done for events of this type all around Melbourne. Their expertise is very good, and again, we'll be expecting permit applications from them. It's important to note that whilst I've been talking about permits, they don't cost anything. It's just a letter, an email, a process that you need to go through. We're not expecting people to spend money to get a permit. You might need to spend a few dollars to get an insurance policy though, so I mentioned that, and perhaps the RSL can look at ways and means by which they could get some form of insurance to cover a number of clubs or the whole organisation. We've also created a standard application form to apply for such events. Again, I've said there in bold, it's not advisable that if you're an inexperienced group that you use that form. Our preference would be that you contact us via the contact names and numbers that we give you and talk it through with us rather than trying to fill out a form that you may not be familiar with. And that's basically it. I didn't want to bore you to tears. I'll leave it at that.